So welcome all to my recital. Thanks for joining me tonight. I'm going to be playing the Bach G minor sonata and Ysaÿe's sonata number 2 for solo violin, The Obsession. These are two major works for violin. It was the Ysaÿe I was always going to put on my recital, but the Bach is something I'm bringing back just because, recital at home, hard to have a piano here. So some stuff from my recital repertoire had to be shifted around, but it's a joy to bring back this wonderful piece. And I think the pieces go really well together. Obviously, Bach and Ysaÿe, it's nice to play pieces, without having to pretend that there's a piano behind me. Both of these pieces are huge. I'll be ending this evening with just a little kind of send-off song that you'll get to hear at the end. I'll leave that as a surprise. But without further ado, I guess let's get started. I'm going to start with the Bach G minor. So Bach wrote three sonatas and three partitas for solo violin when he was in Curtin, Germany. This one that I'm playing comes in 4 movements. The first movement is adagio. The second movement is a fugue. The third movement is a dance movement for a sonata that's slightly strange, a Siciliana. And then it ends with a fast, virtuosic presto. I hope you enjoy it. So now, without further ado, Bach's G minor sonata for solo violin. Bowing, bowing. Anyway, yes, that was the Bach G minor sonata. There's one, I mean, sometimes you repeat that last page that I just played, but I did one repeat in there. I think that was enough. Beautiful piece. Kind of somber, ends pretty much on a very, very minor tonality. One of the reasons why that's my favorite of the fugues, a lot of the fugues that Bach has written, is because it doesn't end on a Picardy third. So the last chord ends in minor, like it's always been in, instead of going to major at the end, which has always been I don't know, it's not my favorite technique. Let me just make sure I'm in tune here. My strings have been tricky to work with today. It seems like every time today I tuned my A up to A440, it would slip down to like A438. So I've just left it there because otherwise the A will slip and it'll just sound out of tune. So my violin is slightly flat right now, and it's fine. It's all relative. Anyway, so now I am going to play Ysaÿe's Sonata Number 2 for solo violin. This sonata is known as the Obsession Sonata. A couple things to know about this one before I start. So Ysaÿe, again, inspired by Bach's 6 solo pieces for violin. Ysaÿe, who is a more modern composer, 20th century composer, he wrote 6 sonatas for solo violin, kind of feeling like he would modernize the techniques used in Bach's sonatas, a little bit more virtuosic, a little bit more modernized for the modern instrument. The violin that Bach wrote for is very different from the violin that Ysaÿe was writing for. In each of his sonatas, he wrote with a specific violinist in mind. You know, some of the great violinists during that time he wrote for. This one is written for Jacques Thibault. And the story goes that Jacques Thibault was struggling with memory slips. And he never actually ended up playing this piece, partially because written in the score is brutalement, which my teacher has told me, thanks Jim, Thibault doesn't do brutal. And you listen to him play, and his playing is very crisp and quaint and sweet, and he would never play something that's too aggressive. Another part of it is this sonata quotes a different Bach sonata, or partita actually, that E major partita that Bach wrote for solo violin. He quotes this throughout, but the way he's written it, it starts with that, and then it quickly goes somewhere else. And then it goes back to that, and then it quickly goes somewhere else. Thibault, who was struggling with memory slips at the time, thought that Ysaÿe was making fun of him because he would play something and then it would quickly change. So I think he was frustrated, and he didn't end up actually playing this piece. So I will play it instead. So yeah, this is also in 4 movements like the Bach sonata. The first movement is fairly perpetual motion, a lot of running 16th notes. The following movement is titled Melancholia, very somber, very sad. It's notated concertino, so to play with mute. I'm not going to play with mute because I feel like there's already enough in this environment that's muting my instrument. Carpet floors and mic over there. The third movement is theme and variations, and the fourth movement is just like a frantic finale, kind of like spastic almost. It's kind of random. This movement, throughout this entire work, actually, Ysaÿe quotes the Dies Irae, which is a Latin chant of the dead. You'll hear it. That's been referenced by so many composers in their compositions before. And it's a little quirk that he throws into this piece. Usually composers are trying to say something, regarding to death or mortality when they put that in their piece, and you'll hear that in multiple guises throughout this piece. It's prominent in the first movement, finds its way into the other movements. I'm sure you'll hear it. Anyway, so here is Ysaÿe, Sonata Number 2, Obsession. Thank you. Man, it's really strange bowing when there's no sound. Just complete silence. Anyway, that was Ysaÿe's second sonata. Fun piece. I probably heard a lot of the Dies Irae. There's a lot of really cool effects in it, especially in that last movement. A lot of like Ponticello stuff, so it sounds really glassy. Means you put your bow right next to the bridge because it's a very particular sound. Anyway, so now two pieces that were like fairly powerful, dramatic, ends on a quiet, or ends on a loud, minor chord. I wanted to end with something a little bit sweet. With everything that's going on, I think that we all just have to remember that there's a light at the end of this tunnel. This will all end. Things will go back to normal, although hopefully with adjustments. Hopefully we learn from this, and hopefully, while this is a tragic, unprecedented, difficult time, we can return to a world that's slightly better off from the lessons that we learned from it. And for that reason, I'm approaching this time with like this kind of bittersweet. It's difficult, but hopefully the lessons learned from it can actually make the world a better place in the long run. So I feel like I wanted something touching, heartfelt, and something that kind of encapsulates that bittersweetness to end the recital. So I'm going to play one of my favorite songs, tunes, pieces, traditional pieces, works. Danny Boy, to conclude this recital. Just to remind us that there's light at the end of the tunnel. Anyway, thank you all for coming, and enjoy Danny Boy. Anyway, thank you for coming. Thank you for attending my master's recital. I hope that you all are having a nice quarantine, staying home, staying safe, washing your hands. I appreciate the chance to do this and the chance to fill your newsfeed with hopefully something that isn't just news and bad news and everything. Hope that it could make everyone's day a little bit more interesting, at least. And thank you again. I will sign off now. Have a great night and enjoy the evening. Bye, everyone. Thanks again. Yay! Oh, it's not done.
Oh, sorry.
My gosh, Mom's right.